Damian Blackwood had everything: power, wealth, control. But the one thing he never expected? Falling for the woman he was never supposed to love. Elena Carter thought this marriage was just a deal, a contract, a way to survive. But when secrets are exposed and enemies strike, she realizes walking away isn't an option anymore. When a single bullet changes everything, will they fight for love or lose each other forever? Before we dive in, tell me which city you're watching from. And don't forget to watch the story till the end. The lights of the elite Manhattan Club flickered against the polished glasses as Damian Blackwood leaned back, a smug smirk playing on his lips. Another night, another pointless bet. His friends, billionaires, heirs, men who thrived on control and indulgence, sat around the private lounge, whiskey glasses in hand, waiting for him to make his move. "You've won every deal, Damian," one of them drawled, swirling his drink. "But how good are you at winning people?" Damian arched a brow. "Name your terms." A chuckle echoed through the room. "Marry someone completely beneath you," his best friend Ethan smirked. "Someone no one would expect, and keep her for 6 months." The challenge hung in the air. Marry for 6 months? It was absurd, but Damian had never backed down from a challenge, and he was bored. Fine. He exhaled a slow breath, his gaze flickering toward the far end of the club, where a woman in a simple black dress was wiping down tables. Elena Carter. The quiet, mysterious maid who had been working at his estate for months. She never spoke unless spoken to. She never flirted with him, never looked at him like every other woman did. She was just there, and that made her the perfect choice. His lips curved into a slow, deliberate smile. "I'll marry her." Laughter erupted around him. "You're serious?" Ethan scoffed. Damian leaned forward, his voice calm, confident, lethal. "I never lose." And this? This was just another game. Elena Carter was used to being invisible. She had spent the past few months working as a maid in Damian Blackwood's mansion, moving through rooms filled with luxury she could never dream of, listening to whispers of power, scandal, and money. But tonight, she wasn't invisible. Because the billionaire himself was standing in front of her, his sharp blue eyes locked onto hers. "Elena," Damian's voice was smooth, like a deal being signed before you knew what was happening. "Marry me." Silence. Then, she laughed, a short, surprised sound, because there was no way this man, this cold, arrogant billionaire, was actually serious. "Excuse me?" She blinked, setting down the tray she was carrying. Damian's smirk deepened. "You heard me." Her pulse kicked up. This had to be a joke, a test, a cruel trick to remind her where she belonged, beneath him. "Elena," he continued, stepping closer, "I'll make it worth your while." She stiffened. "Is this some kind of game to you?" Damian tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "Everything in life is a game," he murmured. "It just depends on whether you win or lose." Her stomach twisted. She had spent years avoiding men like Damian. Men with money, men with power, men who thought they could buy whatever they wanted. And yet, for the first time in her life, she wasn't sure if walking away was the right thing to do. Because she needed money. Because her past was catching up. And because, no matter how much she hated Damian Blackwood, she wasn't sure she could afford to say no. Elena sat across from Damian in his private study, the weight of his proposal crushing her chest. She should have walked away. She should have laughed in his face, told him that no amount of money could make her agree to this insanity. And yet, here she was, because the truth was ugly. She needed this deal. Her debts were suffocating. Her past was a shadow she couldn't outrun, and the danger she had been hiding from was inching closer every day. Still, this was reckless. This was playing with fire. She took a slow breath, forcing herself to meet Damien's gaze. "If I agree," she said carefully, "there will be rules." Damien smirked, leaning back against his chair as if he had already won. "I'm listening." Elena clenched her fists. No intimacy. His smirk faltered slightly, but he said nothing. No expectations outside of public appearances. His blue eyes flickered with amusement. "And after 6 months," she finished, her voice firm, "I leave. No strings attached." A slow silence stretched between them. Damien tilted his head. "You seem to think you have the upper hand here?" Her stomach tightened. She didn't. She knew that. But she also knew one thing. If she was going to survive this, she needed boundaries. Damien studied her for a moment, before finally he nodded. "Fine," he said smoothly. "You have a deal." Elena's breath hitched. She had done it. She had agreed to marry a billionaire. And now there was no turning back. The morning of the wedding arrived faster than Elena could process. She stood in front of the mirror in a custom-made designer gown, the delicate silk clinging to her body like a secret she had no business wearing. This wasn't real. It was a transaction. A cold, calculated move made by a man who saw people as deals to be won. And yet, the moment she stepped out onto the grand balcony of Damien Blackwood's private estate, with the world's richest, most powerful people gathered to watch, it felt terrifyingly real. Damien stood at the end of the aisle, perfectly composed, exuding control. But something shifted when he saw Elena. She looked different. Not like a maid. Not like a woman who worked in the background of his life, but like someone who belonged here. His jaw tightened. This was just a game. Just a deal. And yet, as she reached him, as the cameras flashed, as the whispers of the elite swirled around them, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made the most dangerous gamble of his life. "Do you, Damien Blackwood, take Elena Carter to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Damien's lips curved into a smirk. "I do." Elena's throat tightened as the officiant turned to her. "And do you, Elena Carter, take Damien Blackwood to be your husband?" She hesitated. For a second, just a second, she imagined what her life would have been if she had walked away. Then she looked up at Damien, cold, unreadable, impossibly powerful, and she whispered, "I do." The moment the wedding ended, everything changed. Elena had expected it to feel fake, like a transaction, a staged performance meant to impress the world. But as soon as they stepped into Damien's penthouse, the reality of it hit her like a storm. She was his wife now, not his maid, not an employee, not a nobody. And yet, she felt more alone than ever. Damien loosened his tie as he poured himself a drink, barely sparing her a glance. "You handled yourself well today." Elena's fingers curled into fists, of course. Not a, "you look beautiful." Not a, "how are you feeling?" Just a cold compliment, as if this was nothing more than a business merger. She swallowed her frustration. "I'm exhausted." Damien finally turned, his piercing blue eyes flickering with something unreadable. "Then go to bed." Her breath hitched. Bed. For a split second, her mind raced. Did he expect her to? But then, Damien smirked, as if he had read her thoughts. "Relax, Mrs. Blackwood," he drawled. I'm not touching you. This is just a game, remember? Elena's stomach twisted. She hated how his words should have made her feel relieved. Instead, they just felt empty. Because in this marriage, there were no real emotions, no intimacy, no expectations. Just a cold, distant contract between two strangers. And yet, as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, she couldn't shake one terrifying thought. What happens when pretending starts to feel real? The grand ballroom of the Blackwood Empire Charity Gala was filled with New York's elite. Billionaires, celebrities, powerful families who thrived on money, connections, and ruthless ambition. And tonight, Elena was one of them. She stood beside Damien, the weight of a world she didn't belong to pressing down on her. Her dress was perfect, her hair was flawless, and yet she felt like an imposter. Damien, however, was completely at ease. He moved through the crowd effortlessly, his presence commanding attention. To the world, he was untouchable, a billionaire in control, a man who never lost. But Elena? She was his weakness, and he hated it. Elena, darling, a woman's sharp voice cut through the crowd. Victoria Hayes, Damien's ex-fiancée, tall, blonde, dressed in couture, and dripping with venom. Elena forced a polite smile. Victoria. Victoria's gaze swept over her before landing back on Damien. I see you've made an interesting choice. Elena's stomach twisted, but before she could respond, Damien pulled her close. His arm wrapped around her waist, his grip possessive, firm, and then, with a smirk, he kissed her, right there, in front of everyone. The crowd gasped, Victoria's smile faltered, and Elena? She knew this was just part of the game. So why did it feel so real? Elena could still feel the ghost of Damien's lips on hers. The kiss had been strategic, a move meant to silence his ex, to prove a point in front of their elite audience. But to her, it had been something else entirely. Something dangerous. Something she couldn't afford to feel. Victoria's forced smile didn't hide the way her eyes flashed with jealousy. Well, she said, voice sharp, I suppose congratulations are in order. Damien's smirk was pure arrogance. Glad to have your blessing, Victoria. Elena swallowed. This was just an act. She was supposed to be his wife, his equal, his partner. But the reality? She was just a pawn in his game. And yet, as Victoria turned and stalked away, something flickered in Damien's expression. Satisfaction, possession, and maybe, just maybe, something real. Elena needed air. She slipped away from the ballroom, out onto the balcony, desperate to breathe. This wasn't her world. She didn't belong here. She wasn't a socialite. She wasn't a billionaire's trophy wife. She wasn't, you shouldn't be out here alone. The deep voice sent a shiver down her spine. She turned, her heart skipping a beat. Lucas Moreau, tall, charming, and one of Damien's biggest business rivals. And right now, he was watching her with a little too much interest. You're full of surprises, Mrs. Blackwood, Lucas mused, stepping closer. I have to admit, I didn't think Damien was the marrying type. Elena forced a polite smile. Neither did I, Lucas chuckled. Careful, he murmured, his gaze sharp. Damien doesn't like to share. A slow, dangerous heat prickled her skin. And then, Elena. The word was like a warning. Damien stood in the doorway, his blue eyes locked onto hers. And the moment he saw Lucas standing too close, his expression darkened. Elena's stomach flipped. Because this wasn't part of the game. This was something else. Something dangerously close to jealousy. Damien's icy blue gaze locked onto Lucas like a silent warning. Elena could feel the tension crackling between them, like two predators circling the same prey. She wasn't sure why, but a part of her wanted to step back, to disappear into the shadows the way she had always done. But she was Damien Blackwood's wife now. At least that's what the world believed. So instead, she stood her ground. Lucas smirked, his sharp features glowing under the dim balcony lights. "No need to be so territorial, Damien," he drawled. "I was just getting to know your lovely wife." Damien's jaw clenched. His fingers curled into a fist at his side. For a terrifying moment, Elena thought he might actually punch Lucas. But instead, Damien did something far worse. He reached for her, pulling her against him, his grip possessive, unyielding. "She's mine," he said, voice low, dangerous. "That's all you need to know." Elena's breath hitched. Lucas simply chuckled, completely unfazed. "We'll see," he murmured, before stepping back into the ballroom. The second they were alone, Elena yanked herself away. "What the hell was that?" she hissed, her heart pounding. Damien stared at her, his expression unreadable. "Lucas doesn't respect boundaries." She crossed her arms. "And you do?" Something flickered in his gaze. Something dark. Something dangerous. "Elena," he said slowly, stepping closer. "You're my wife. People will come after you just to get to me. I need them to know you're untouchable." Her throat tightened. This was exactly why she had set rules from the start. No real emotions. No blurred lines. No pretending that this was something more than a contract. But tonight, it felt very real, and that scared her more than anything else. The car ride back to the penthouse was silent. Damien sat beside Elena, his posture rigid, his jaw clenched. The way he had dragged her away from Lucas, the way his grip had tightened around her waist, the way his eyes had darkened. It wasn't about the game anymore. This was something else, something raw, something dangerous. And Elena didn't know what to do with it. When they stepped inside, the air between them was thick with unspoken words. Elena turned, arms crossed. "Do you always act like that when another man talks to your wife?" Damien's lips curved into a slow smirk, but there was no amusement in his eyes. "Only when that man is Lucas Moreau." Elena scoffed. "So this isn't about me, just another game between billionaires?" Damien moved, too fast, too close. Before she could blink, his hands were on either side of the wall, caging her in. "You think this is a game to me?" His voice was low, rough, almost possessive. Her breath hitched. "Isn't it?" she whispered. For a second, just a second, something flickered in Damien's gaze. Something real. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. He exhaled sharply, stepping back. "This marriage is a deal, Elena," he said, his voice controlled again. "Don't read into it." Her chest tightened. Of course. She had known that from the beginning. So why did it feel like a lie? Elena sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the sealed envelope in her hands. It had been waiting for her when she returned to the penthouse. No name, no sender, just a stark reminder of the past she had fought to escape. Her hands trembled as she turned it over. She didn't have to open it to know what it meant. The past was catching up. And this time, she wasn't sure she could outrun it. Damien noticed the change in her the second he walked in. Elena was always carefully composed, never revealing too much, never letting her emotions slip. But tonight, she looked haunted, his brows furrowed. "What's wrong?" She flinched, gripping the letter tighter. "Nothing." Damien's jaw clenched. Liar. Elena's chest tightened. If she told him the truth, If she let him see the side of her that wasn't his polished, obedient wife, but the girl who had once lost everything, would he still look at her the same way? Or would he finally see her for what she really was? Later that night, when she was sure Damien was asleep, Elena finally opened the letter. Her breath hitched as she read the first line. "You can't hide forever." Her blood ran cold, because she knew exactly who it was from. And if they had found her, then everything she had built, everything she had fought to protect, was about to come crashing down. Elena couldn't breathe. The letter lay open in front of her. The words burned into her mind. You can't hide forever. A warning. A threat. A reminder that the past was never truly gone. Her hands shook as she shoved the letter into her purse. She needed to be smart. She needed to handle this before Damien found out. Because if he did, everything would be ruined. Damien sat in his private study, swirling a glass of whiskey, but his mind wasn't on business. It was on her. Elena had been acting strange since they got back from the gala. Distant, uneasy, like she was carrying a secret too heavy to bear. And Damien hated secrets. He leaned back, exhaling sharply. He needed to find out what she was hiding. Elena moved quickly, slipping out of the penthouse and into the cool night air. The city streets were alive with energy, but she barely noticed. She had one goal. Get in. Get answers. Get out. She reached the dark alley behind an upscale hotel and spotted him immediately. A man stood in the shadows, his features obscured, but she knew who he was. Her last connection to the life she had left behind. "You shouldn't have come," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. The man smirked. "And you shouldn't have married Damien Blackwood." Her stomach twisted, because deep down, she knew he was right. Damien's blood ran cold as he watched from the black car parked across the street. Elena, alone, meeting a man in the dark. And the worst part? She looked like she knew him, like she had always known him. Something inside Damien snapped. He threw open the car door, ready for answers, ready for the truth. Even if he wasn't sure he would like what he found. Elena felt the air shift before she even turned around. She didn't need to see him to know he was there. Damien. His presence was a storm, dark and charged with energy, standing just feet behind her. Her pulse spiked. This was bad. She turned slowly, her eyes locking onto his. His blue gaze burned with fury. "What the hell are you doing here?" His voice was quiet, but there was nothing calm about it. The man beside her, the one she had been trying to get rid of, stepped back. "Well, this is interesting," he muttered. "Looks like your husband doesn't trust you very much." Damien's jaw clenched. "Walk away. Now." The man grinned like he enjoyed this. But he knew better than to test Damien Blackwood's temper. With a final glance at Elena, he disappeared into the night, leaving her alone with Damien. And now, she was in more trouble than ever. They didn't speak until they were inside the car, the air thick with tension. Damien's grip on the steering wheel was tight, his knuckles white. Finally, who was he? Elena hesitated. A mistake. Damien's eyes flicked toward her, sharp, unreadable, elaborate. She swallowed, turning to the window. "I can't." Damien let out a humorless laugh. "You met him in the middle of the night, in an alley, like you were covering up a crime." Elena's chest tightened. "It's not what you think." Damien's hand slammed against the dashboard. "Then tell me what the hell it is, Elena." Her breath hitched. She had never seen him like this before. Angry, Yes, ruthless, always. But this was something else, something possessive, something desperate. And before she could stop herself, she reached for him. Damien's body stilled. Her fingers barely grazed his wrist, but the impact was instant. He turned, his eyes burning into hers. Elena. She should have pulled away, should have ended this before it got worse. But she didn't, because in that moment, the tension snapped. Damien moved, faster than she could think. His lips crashed against hers. It wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It was a mistake. A reckless, passionate mistake. But neither of them stopped, because for the first time since this marriage began, it didn't feel like a game. It felt real. Elena hadn't slept since last night. Not after what had happened in the car. Not after Damien kissed her. It wasn't supposed to happen. It had never been part of the deal. And yet, even now, she could still feel it. The way his hands had gripped her waist. The way his breath had shaken against her skin. The way it felt like he was losing control, just as much as she was. She should have pushed him away, should have stopped before it was too late. But now Damien was acting different. Elena. She froze at the sound of his voice. Damien stood in the doorway of her room, dressed in his signature black suit, his expression unreadable. We need to talk. Her throat tightened. She nodded, following him into his private study, the air thick with unspoken tension. Damien closed the door behind them. I need to know what last night meant, he said, his voice low, controlled, yet sharp with something else. Her breath hitched. You kissed me. You kissed me back. She flinched. Silence. Then Damien stepped closer, his blue eyes dangerously unreadable. I don't lose control, Elena. Her pulse spiked. Then what was that? She whispered. His jaw clenched. I don't know. That confession stunned her. Because Damien Blackwood never admitted to uncertainty. He never admitted to feeling anything. But now he was breaking all of his own rules, and that scared her more than anything. Because if this continued, she wasn't sure if she'd survive it. Elena knew she should stay away from Damien. That kiss, that mistake, should have been the end of whatever dangerous game they were playing. But the problem was, Damien wasn't backing down. And worse, neither was she. She found him in his private study, staring at the New York skyline, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He didn't turn when she entered, but he knew she was there. He always did. Elena, he murmured. Are you here to finally tell me the truth? Her heart stopped. For a split second she considered it, telling him everything. The real reason she took this deal. The secret she had been hiding for years. The man she had been running from. But if she did, if Damien knew who she really was, would he still look at her the same way? Or would he walk away? Her throat tightened. I already told you, she whispered. There's nothing to tell. Damien exhaled slowly. Then he turned. His blue eyes burned into hers, unrelenting. You're lying, he said. Her stomach twisted. She should have left. Should have walked away before this turned into something she couldn't control. But instead, she stayed. And that was the biggest mistake of all. Elena could feel it before it even happened. The shift in the air. The weight of something about to go terribly wrong. And then, it happened. She had been in the grand hall of the Blackwood estate preparing for yet another public event, when the whispers started. Soft at first, then louder until suddenly, all eyes were on her. Confusion tightened in her chest. Then Victoria Hayes stepped forward, with a smile too sharp, too cruel. "I must say, Elena," Victoria said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, "you've done an excellent job playing the perfect wife." The room tensed. Elena's stomach dropped. Something was wrong. Terribly, terribly wrong. And then Victoria held up a folder, a file full of documents, photos, proof. "I wonder," Victoria mused, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Does Damien know who you really are?" Elena's blood ran cold. No, no, no. She froze as Damien finally turned, his piercing blue eyes locking onto hers, and for the first time, they weren't unreadable. They were furious. "Elena," his voice was lethal, low, sharp. "Tell me she's lying." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Because she knew. She knew that whatever was in that file, Victoria had just destroyed everything. And for the first time, Elena had no way out. The grand hall had gone silent. Damien's blue eyes were locked onto Elena's, sharp and unforgiving. Victoria's smirk widened, the file still in her hand. "I guess you never told him, did you?" she said, mocking. "Poor Damien, always so powerful, yet so easily fooled." Elena's heart hammered in her chest. She had to say something. She had to fix this before it was too late. But Damien's next words shattered everything. "Everyone, get out!" The entire room shifted. People glanced at each other, unsure, but no one dared to disobey Damien Blackwood. Within seconds, the crowd thinned, until it was just Damien, Elena, and the truth waiting to explode. Damien reached for the file in Victoria's hands. He flipped through the pages, his expression unreadable at first. Then, as he pieced together the information, his grip tightened, his jaw clenched, his breathing grew heavier. "Elena." His voice was dangerously low, too calm. "Tell me this isn't real." Her throat tightened. She had never been afraid of Damien before. Not like this. Not when his rage was cold, controlled. She opened her mouth, but he slammed the file onto the table. "You lied to me." She flinched. "You've been lying to me this whole time." "Damien, what else aren't you telling me?" The sharpness in his voice cut through her. This wasn't the man who had kissed her in the car. This wasn't the man who had held her like she was something fragile. This was Damien Blackwood, the ruthless billionaire. And right now, he was looking at her like she was his biggest mistake. Elena's chest ached. "I was going to tell you," she whispered. Damien let out a cold laugh. "Were you?" She swallowed. She could explain. She could fix this. She could. Damien stepped back, his voice razor sharp. "This marriage is over." Her heart stopped. And just like that, everything she had tried to protect was gone. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "This marriage is over." Elena felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath her. She had known this day would come. She had known that the truth, her truth, would eventually destroy everything. But hearing Damien say it, it hurt more than she expected. Damien stood rigid, his cold blue eyes unreadable, his hands clenched into tight fists. Elena swallowed hard, willing herself to stay strong. If he was going to throw her away, she wouldn't beg. She wouldn't break. She wouldn't let him see how much this was tearing her apart. She straightened her spine, keeping her voice steady. "Fine." Damien's jaw ticked. "You're just going to walk away?" His voice was sharp, cutting through the silence like a knife. Elena lifted her chin. "You gave me no choice." Something flickered in his gaze. Anger, frustration, something deeper. But he didn't stop her. And that was all she needed to know. She packed her bags in less than an hour. No hesitation, no second guessing. Just one final goodbye to the life she had never truly belonged in. She was almost at the front door when she heard his voice. Elena. She froze. For a second, just a second, she let herself hope. But when she turned, Damien's face was cold. Leave your wedding ring behind. Her heart shattered. She swallowed the lump in her throat, then slowly slid the ring off her finger. She placed it on the table, didn't say a word, didn't look back. And then she walked away. And this time, Damien let her go. Elena gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had nowhere to go, no plan, no safety net, just the cold reality that she had walked away from Damien Blackwood. And this time, it was for good. But deep down, she knew this wasn't over, because her past, it was finally coming for her. Damien sat alone in his penthouse, the whiskey glass untouched in his hand. He had expected relief when she left. Instead, all he felt was rage. He had given her everything. A life most people could only dream of. His name. His protection. And yet, she had lied to him. Why? What the hell had she been hiding? His fingers curled around the glass, his jaw clenched. He needed answers, and he knew exactly where to find them. Elena barely had time to process the mess her life had become when she pulled into a small, run-down motel on the outskirts of the city. She couldn't go back to her old apartment. She couldn't risk being followed. This was the safest option, for now. But the second she stepped into her room, her heart stopped. Because lying on the bed was another envelope, a single piece of paper inside. You should have stayed hidden. Her blood ran ice cold. They had found her. And now, she wasn't the only one in danger. Damien Blackwood wasn't a man who doubted his decisions. He built empires, made ruthless deals, destroyed anyone who dared to cross him. But tonight, he felt something he never had before. Regret. His office was dark, the only light coming from the city skyline. In his hand, Elena's wedding ring. She had left it behind without a second thought, without a fight. And yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had made a mistake. Damien had never needed anyone, not in business, not in life, not in love, if he even believed in. Elena's hands trembled as she stared at the letter. You should have stayed hidden. The past she had buried, the life she had fled from, it was all catching up to her. She had known this day would come. She had just hoped it wouldn't be so soon. Meanwhile, Damien sat in his penthouse, his mind drowning in frustration. He had spent the past 48 hours trying to focus on business, trying to convince himself that Elena was just another deal gone wrong. But no matter how hard he tried, her face, her voice, haunted him. And the more he thought about her, the more he realized something didn't add up. She had been hiding something, and Damien Blackwood hated being kept in the dark. Elena knew she had no choice. She had to face this. She dialed the number she had sworn to never call again. The line rang once, twice. Then, a familiar voice answered. You should have left well enough alone, Elena. Her stomach twisted. You have nothing to threaten me with anymore, she said, keeping her voice steady. A low chuckle. Oh, sweetheart, that's where you're wrong. The call cut off. Elena's heart pounded. This wasn't just about her anymore. They were coming for Damien too, and unless she stopped them, she was going to lose everything. Damien had always prided himself on being a man of logic. Every decision he made was calculated. Every risk was weighed. Every move was about control. But right now, He felt like he was losing it. His team had been tracking Elena for 2 days. She had disappeared from the penthouse without a trace. No credit card activity, no phone calls, nothing. And that didn't sit right with him. Because Elena Carter was too smart to just vanish, which meant she was running from something, or worse, someone. His phone rang, breaking the tense silence in his office. He answered without hesitation. "Sir," his head of security said, "we found her." Damien's grip on the phone tightened. "Where?" There was a brief pause. "A rundown motel on the outskirts of the city." A motel? Damien stilled. Why the hell would she be hiding in a place like that? Unless... His stomach hardened. She was in trouble. And for the first time in his life, Damien didn't care about winning, about power, about pride. He just needed to get to her. Elena sat on the edge of the motel bed, gripping the burner phone in her hand. She had one chance to end this before it spiraled out of control. One chance to make sure Damien stayed safe. Because if he got involved, he wouldn't walk away unharmed. She knew that better than anyone. Outside, a sleek black car pulled up to the motel parking lot. Damien stepped out, his jaw tight, his eyes cold. He had spent 2 days searching for her, and now that he had found her, she wasn't getting away again. He didn't knock, didn't hesitate. He pushed the door open, stepping inside like he owned the place. Elena's breath caught. Damien, standing in the doorway, his sharp suit at odds with the cheap, dimly lit motel room. His blue eyes locked onto her, dark with something unreadable. "You have 5 seconds to tell me what the hell is going on." Her stomach twisted. She had prepared for this, had told herself exactly what she would say if Damien ever found her. But now, with him standing in front of her, looking like he was barely holding himself together, every word vanished. Because she had just made the biggest mistake of all. She had let herself miss him. Elena's heart pounded as Damien stepped closer. The motel room suddenly felt too small, too suffocating. But it wasn't the space. It was him. The way he looked at her, like he was barely holding back his rage or something else. "You ran." Damien's voice was low, controlled, but dangerous. Elena forced herself to meet his gaze. "I had to." His jaw tightened. "Why?" She swallowed, choosing her words carefully. "Because my past isn't safe, and neither are you." Damien let out a cold laugh. "So you thought disappearing without a word was the solution?" Her hands curled into fists. "I was protecting you." A sharp silence fell between them. Then Damien moved. Fast. 1 second, he was across the room. The next, he was inches from her, his eyes burning. "You don't get to decide what I need protection from, Elena." Her breath hitched. His presence was too much, too close, too overwhelming. She needed to push him away. She needed to end this before it got worse. But she couldn't. Because deep down, a part of her had wanted him to find her. And that was the real problem. Damien's patience snapped. Elena had always been a mystery. From the moment she walked into his life, she had been hiding something. And now he was done waiting for answers. "Elena," his voice was low, dangerous. "Tell me the truth." She looked away. He grabbed her wrist, gently but firmly, forcing her to face him. "No more lies. No more running. Who the hell are you running from?" Her pulse raced. She should have pulled away. Should have told him nothing. Should have protected him from the storm that was coming straight for them. But for the first time, she broke. "My real last name isn't Carter," she whispered. Damien stilled. His grip on her wrist tightened. "What?" She exhaled sharply, hating how much this hurt. My family. We weren't poor. We weren't nobodies. She finally met his gaze, eyes full of something raw. We were destroyed by the Blackwood Empire. Silence. A deadly, suffocating silence. Then, Damien's expression turned to stone. She saw it happen in real time. The realization, the rage, the betrayal, and just like that, the man she had fallen for was no longer looking at her the same way. Elena braced herself for the worst, for Damien to yell, to walk away, to throw her out of his life for good, but instead, he just stared at her, cold, unmoving, like she was someone he didn't recognize anymore. You lied to me, he finally said, his voice quiet, too quiet. Elena's stomach twisted. I didn't lie, she whispered. Damien laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You just what? He took a step forward. You just forgot to mention that my family destroyed yours? Elena flinched. She should have told him sooner. She should have trusted him. But she hadn't. And now? Now she was about to lose him. Damien clenched his jaw, turning away from her. This shouldn't hurt. This shouldn't feel like a betrayal. But it did. Because for the first time in years, he had let someone in, and she had been keeping secrets from the beginning. Elena, his voice was rough, edged with something raw. If you ever meant any of this, if you ever felt anything real for me, then prove it. Her breath hitched. How? She whispered. Damien's blue eyes burned into hers. Stay. She froze. Because this wasn't a demand, this wasn't an order, this was a plea. Stay, fight for us. For the first time in forever, Damien Blackwood wasn't trying to win. He was just trying not to lose her. And Elena? She wasn't sure if she had the strength to walk away this time. Elena had never seen Damien like this. Not as the arrogant billionaire. Not as the man who always controlled everything. Not as the ruthless businessman who never let emotions get in the way. This Damien. He looked desperate, and that terrified her more than anything. Elena, he repeated, his voice rough, edged with something raw. Stay. She swallowed hard, her pulse racing. What happens if I do? She whispered. Damien's jaw clenched. You tell me the truth, all of it. No more lies, no more running. Elena hesitated, because she knew. Once she told him everything, there would be no going back. No pretending, no escaping, no more hiding in the shadows. But then, Damien took another step closer. And just like that, her heart betrayed her. Because despite everything, despite the secrets, despite the danger, she still wanted him, still wanted this. So she did the one thing she had never done before. She let down her walls. And finally, she told him the truth. Elena had expected Damien to walk away after she told him the truth. She had expected rage, expected him to hate her, expected him to throw her out of his life forever. But instead, he stayed. And that was far more terrifying. Damien sat across from her, his blue eyes dark, calculating. He had listened to everything. The truth about her family. The truth about how his empire had destroyed hers. The truth about why she had taken this deal in the first place. And now, he was quiet. Too quiet. Finally, he exhaled, running a hand through his hair. So that's it? His voice was low, unreadable. Elena's throat tightened. I never wanted to hurt you, Damien. His lips curled into a bitter smile. Hurt me? He let out a humorless laugh. Elena, you wrecked me. Her chest ached. She shouldn't care. She shouldn't feel guilty, but she did. Because somewhere along the way, this had stopped being just a deal, and she had fallen for him. Before she could say anything, before she could even breathe, the sound of shattering glass filled the room. Then, a bullet tore through the air. Damien moved before she could react. 1 second, she was frozen in shock. The next, she was on the ground, Damien covering her body, his breathing ragged. Her heart stopped. "Damien," she whispered, panic rising in her throat. She pulled back, and that's when she saw it. Blood. Dripping down his arm. A gunshot wound. Her entire world tilted. Because this wasn't just about her anymore. This was war. And now, Damien was bleeding because of her. Elena's hands shook as she pressed down on Damien's wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Stay with me," she whispered, panic clawing at her chest. Damien groaned, his jaw clenched in pain, but his grip on her wrist was strong. "Elena!" His voice was rough, weak, but still demanding. Her throat tightened. This was her fault. She had brought danger to his doorstep, and now, he was paying the price. The room erupted with noise as Damien's security team stormed in, weapons drawn. "Sir!" One of them rushed forward. Elena barely heard them. All she could see was Damien, the man who had protected her, the man who had wanted her to stay, the man who had just taken a bullet for her. And suddenly, everything was clear. She had spent so long running, hiding, convincing herself that she wasn't worthy of love, that she wasn't worthy of him. But now, she knew the truth. She loved him. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't going to run away from it. Elena never prayed. But tonight, as she sat beside Damien's hospital bed, his face pale, his arm wrapped in bandages, she silently begged for him to wake up. She had spent her entire life convincing herself that love was dangerous, that it was a weakness, that it was something people like her couldn't afford. But now, watching Damien fight for his life because of her, she knew she had been wrong. A soft groan broke the silence. Her heart stopped. Then, Damien's eyes fluttered open. "Elena." His voice was weak, but still Damien, still sharp, still demanding, still the man who had wrecked her world. Tears burned her eyes. "You idiot," she whispered, gripping his hand. "You weren't supposed to get hurt." Damien let out a soft chuckle even as he winced. "You're really bad at saying thank you." Her throat tightened. She had almost lost him, and she couldn't let that happen again. So for the first time, she let herself be honest. "I love you," she whispered. Damien froze. His breath hitched, his blue eyes widened, like he had never expected to hear those words from her. "Elena," her fingers tightened around his. "I spent my whole life running, from my past, from my feelings, from you." She exhaled sharply. "But I'm done running." A slow silence stretched between them. Then, Damien moved, despite the pain, despite the injury. He reached for her, his grip pulling her close. "Elena Blackwood," he murmured, voice rough. "You were never supposed to be mine." His lips brushed against hers. "But I'm never letting you go now." And when he kissed her, she knew. This wasn't a deal anymore. This was real. And this time, she was finally home. The storm had passed. For the first time in forever, Elena didn't feel like she was running. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't pretending. She wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. She was exactly where she was meant to be, with him. Damien's recovery had been faster than expected, not because he followed doctor's orders, he never did, but because he refused to waste another second away from her. And now, standing in the middle of his private island, dressed in a flowing white gown, Elena couldn't believe this was real. Her wedding, the real one. Not a contract, not a deal, not a game, just them. Damien stood at the altar, his blue eyes locked onto hers. She had never seen him like this before. Not cold, not distant, not the ruthless billionaire who owned the world. Just a man, her man. And when she finally reached him, he did something that shocked her. He took her hands in his and smiled. A real, genuine, breathtaking smile. "Elena," he murmured, voice deep with emotion. "I never thought I'd say this." He exhaled sharply. "But losing you was the only thing I was ever truly afraid of." Tears burned her eyes. "I love you, Damien," she whispered. His grip tightened. "Say it again." Her lips curved. "I love you." And before the officiant could even finish, Damien pulled her close and kissed her like his life depended on it. Because maybe it did.